most mysterious yet highly transformational ventures in this space. So I am super excited today to be able to talk to the founder of Magic Leap. But the best way to do that, I thought, was to bring a very good friend of mine and serial entrepreneur here in Boston, Jon Hirschtick, who is the founder of companies like SolidWorks and currently the founder and CEO of OnShape that many have heard of. He's also been a longtime friend and advisor to Rony and Magic Leap, and they are going to do a very unique, can't really call it a fireside chat, but a very unique chat together here today, and we're really excited to hear about what is coming down the pipeline with Magic Leap. So Jon and Rony, why don't you join me here, and I'll turn it over to you.
Well,
hey Jon.
hey Rony, great to see you.
It's all good.
And welcome. And I just wanted to add to Jody's kind
Everybody.
introduction. Yeah, hey.
Oh, Jody, there was no hug for the robot?
I think you got to do it. You got to do it. There's no hug for the robot. There's no fire at this fireside chat, but when Rony and his colleagues get a little further on their journey, we'll have a fire. Oh, you put a virtual fire. Someday we'll have the feeling of fire here. I just wanted to add that you meet a lot of people in life, and once in a while you get lucky to meet someone really special, and that's what happened to me probably 15 to 20 years ago, Rony, right? Rony was then starting another company long before Magic Leap and was introduced to me, and we met in Boston. And I remember that feeling you get once in a while. You meet someone really special, and you just know you've met someone who's going to do great things. And I felt that the day I met you. I said that to many people long before you had Magic Leap, and it's a delight to see you succeed, not only in your previous company, but now with Magic Leap. So I'm excited, and I think we'll have more fun today than anyone here. Rony, I remember when you were starting in this sort of primordial soup of ideas with Magic Leap. I couldn't figure it out when you were first telling me about it, but can you go back to that time and share with me, share with us, what led you to do this? Why get started with this?
Yeah, it's, I think the white paper, if we get to do a white paper one day, will be really clean and orderly, but I think the reality is much more like, the primordial soup of lava and things bubbling around, and I think a lot of different threads wiggling together. One of them was very creative. I was coming out of Mako, which was the robotic surgery company where I first met Jon. In fact, I really met Jon before Mako actually ever became anything. And Jon was like ridiculously inspiring to myself and the other early folks at what became Mako. He told us something like, if you're going to the moon, you have to have a full tank of fuel, something like that. It was somewhat like we kind of used it as a rallying cry for a while. But it was about trying to imagine a creative future state of how computing should be. That's the most elegant way to describe it. And creativity is messy, it's sloppy, and that imagination of it was something that I was working on. I had a friend in New Zealand, Richard Taylor, who was you might know him from helping create films like Avatar, Lord of the Rings. I figured a group like that could help imagine some future state. And having grown up with computing, I don't remember a time where I didn't have a computer. I'm like a child of the people that invented computers. So I was trying to imagine, is this what life is like? Or is there something else that my generation gets to reimagine for the next couple of generations? It was a lot of those kind of questions. Plus, it was just wanting to make stuff that was really freaking cool. I think, there could be all this elegant, highfalutin components to it. It was like, wouldn't it be really cool if? And then there was almost this sense of pessimism, like, oh, I'm going to be like 150 before this stuff happens. And then there was a sense of outrage, like, oh, it's the year 2000 something, or 2010, or 2011. Why the heck aren't we doing this? Like, where's the flying cars? Where's my spaceship? Where's my X-Wing? So it was all these kind of different emotions and sort of future state visions coming into being. I don't know if that helps, but that's a glimpse of what was going on there.
I think that helps a lot. And we have a bunch of terms on the agenda today. There's VR, AR, MR, and mixed reality light field. And I think probably a lot of people here would love to hear your views on, can you define those things? Can you tell us how they're different? And how
Sure. I'll give you the way we think of them magically for how we use them and why we have different terms. So there's sort of the science fiction terminology of virtual reality, which could be all-encompassing, like the William Gibson, Neil Stephenson, which really doesn't reflect the actuality and the category of what people call VR today. So what people call VR today kind of got codified, somewhere in the 70s of like a stereoscopic 3D thing that you put on your head that shuts out the world. And today it's translated into some kind of like cell phone-like screen in a ViewMastery kind of thing strapped onto your head. Some more or less sophisticated, but all of those VR contraptions, they have a couple things in common. They're using cell phone-like displays put right in front of your eye, and the design, the underlying input signal to your brain goes back to the 1830s. A guy named Charles Wheatstone. This is a Harvard geek thing. Go research it. He invented the stereoscope. We actually have a stereoscope at the office. It's pretty cool. The grandmother of one of our kids. And it looks just like what people call VR today minus the cell phone screen. It's kind of eerie. So it's like this kind of old idea from the 1800s, but like reset with a cell phone. That's like the product categories we know today, which is not what Magic Leap is doing. And also not having talked to some of these writers, one of the works at Magic Leap, not what the science fiction writers were imagining, but the category of VR today is like a particular design manifestation around an 1830s stereoscopic design idea called stereoscopy. So we call ourselves something else to differentiate from that current manifestation of that design. What people call augmented reality could also be confusing because augmented reality was like the rainbow's end, sort of vision of that. But then there's like, Google Glass or the Terminator heads-up display style text overlaid on the world. And then there's like using your cell phone to chase Pokemon, looking through the video of your cell phone. So the idea of augmented reality kind of has codified itself around products and designs, which are also not what we're doing. So we wanted to come up with a different category. We started calling ourselves mixed reality light field. And I'll dive into light field in just a minute to make it really clear. But I love the term mixed reality because it's the complete spectrum of the analog and digital signal. The analog being the light field of the world, and the digital being the digital light field signal we can create and how you blend those things. So it covers the entire spectrum, but done with a signal that the eye-brain system of the brain biology evolved to accept. And if we could double-click on that one more second, the idea of a light field is the very origin of the universe begins with photons and the Big Bang type explosion, at least so we think. And that photonic wavefront, which goes out to the very edge of the universe, that is these huge kind of light field series of wavefronts around us. That's like very primal and ancient, and the biology of our brain also evolved into this system. So I look at light field as being like the origin of physics, and our eye-brain system biology is the origin of people, and these things evolved to be incredibly symbiotic. So I realized to make the future computing happen, you need to understand that handshake between light fields and eye-brain biology, including the eye, retina, and whole brain system, including deep brain visual processing, in order to make that feature happen. So that's what mixed reality light field is trying to be. Sorry for the very long, highfalutin thing, but we're in a place where we can be slightly long and highfalutin, I guess.
Yeah, well, I think you definitely can be. And I remember the first time Rony gave me this this really interesting discussion. I shouldn't call it a lecture, I mean in a good way. Literally, pun intended, you opened my eyes to think about all the things I had ever felt as a computer graphics person, but a VR, AR, MR novice. I never really thought much about it. You made me realize that all these 3D experiences I had seen, like 3D movies, not to take a shot at them, but I suddenly understood that things like 3D movies fight your visual neuro system that you were talking about, and the net result is I can't go to the 3D movies anymore. After talking to Rony for like an hour about this, I can never go back now to see 3D movies because the left-right, the stereoscopic way they work. after I'm a convert to your philosophy, so I just mentioned that. I don't understand it all, but I'm a convert. Rony, I wanted to ask you, this is we talked earlier, and he knows some of the questions I'm going to ask. I'll ask some that
I heard there's some surprises.
Yeah, a few surprises. Oh, one of the surprises was I came wearing my OnShape shirt. I want to let you know, since I'm also an advisor to Magic Leap, I also wore underneath a shirt that you gave me, which is my Magic Leap shirt, which I was now told is a vintage one.
That is a vintage one,
Could be sold by me on eBay, which I have no plans to do.
Yeah,
So here I am.
yeah, that's your equity backup.
So, yeah, it's good to have a back pocket plan. So I'm now here fully in my role as a very small advisor to Magic Leap, and also a partner. We'll get to that later. But let me ask you, when the platform's built, if we were to go use our time machine, which may be the next thing you build.
That's in my garage right now.
That's Rev 2. When we take the time machine in the future and everything you're building is deployed, or at least Rev 1 is deployed, you'll not only be the builder of Magic Leap, but you'll also be a user, right?
Yes.
And I'm wondering if you would say, what is it that you're most excited about thinking as a user when you go home, not selling the product, not building it, but you go home and it's just you or you and your friends at home or wherever else you'll use it, which could be anywhere. What do you look forward to the most as a user?
The real answer?
Yeah, the real answer.
The real answer.
Yeah.
Not the commercially viable answer, but
Yeah, it doesn't have to be commercially viable. Yeah.
I want to go to a high school gymnasium, which is going to happen, and just fill it with a lot of fish, because I love scuba diving, and I would just love to sit on the wooden floor and sit there just having like fish swim by, and if anyone's, well, I guess you guys haven't, but folks who've been to Magic Leap have seen us make fish and sharks, and they just sort of swim around, and I love the idea of like going to a space that would almost be a very surrealistic experience that's really big and has some caverns, and then we just fill it with these like semi-AI fish, and just to be there with it, just to have that sort of experience like sitting on the bottom of the ocean. I'm really looking forward to doing that. I know that doesn't sound very, it's not like highly business enterprise, but I just think it would be a really cool Zen kind of moment, and I think that would be awesome. Plus, I grew up on like vintage video games, so I really can't wait to make like mixed reality asteroids with like classic vector graphics. I'm really like geeking out here, and just kind of like sitting at home, like you're just hanging out on the couch and they just float by you with all the classic and just blow them and watch them bounce off the walls and tables, and maybe doing Pong. I think classic Pong would be kind of awesome. Like you're just playing Pong off the wall. I'd be pretty happy with that. But we could do a lot more, but I think that would just be like satisfying the 8-year-old in me.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm glad. I hope you find it interesting too. I like
Plus, I want an X-Wing fighter in my driveway.
X-Wing fighter in your driveway. Okay. Well, you probably want that in real reality too.
Yes, I want the atoms as well.
Yeah. So yeah, you'll get. Well, I'm sure with time you'll get both, with bits and atoms.
One more thing on that. I can't wait, because I did mechanical engineering and then biomedical engineering. I can't wait to actually sit around at home, come up with crazy ideas, and use stuff like OnShape and see those ideas just emanate. Because I think that, like, having been a McMechie and grown up like in the early days of CAD and things like that, that is part of the formulation of thinking, like imagining creating something that's in the world, but then having to translate that to 2D and back again was an art form that only certain engineers can do well. And now you can actually just do it directly in the world, and I think that is going to be sick and awesome. And John has seen some of the things we're doing. It is pretty freaking cool. So.
Yeah, the stuff they're doing is really freaking cool. I'm glad you brought this up. I've worked building CAD systems. That's what I do for 35 years now, and I've done a succession of computing platforms. I've seen all kinds of changes in computers and changes in input and output devices come along, and many have been very useful. Many of you are CAD users, maybe. Any of you CAD users or know about CAD? Okay, some do. For the rest of you, bear with me a moment. But I have to say that having seen the platform, and we've publicly announced that we have a partnership between Magic Leap and OnShape. We haven't said any more than we have a partnership. But having having thought about it, I think I can say without reservation that I truly believe that what Magic Leap is doing has the potential to improve the way every product on Earth gets designed and manufactured and built. It's so profound for what it could do for the CAD user, which is, as you say, an application that isn't about entertainment. So well, design can be very entertaining, but it really can change the way it will work. And actually, do you want to comment on any other, what I call business uses of mixed reality Lightfield?
Yeah, let me relate why, I guess, I think the comments about VR, AR, MR, our variant is mixed reality Lightfield, and why we think it's relevant to things like design, but also extrapolate to things like healthcare and other areas. The brain, the visual processing of the brain, the visual cortex, was really evolved to be spatial. We learn and think in a spatial way, and then for the last hundreds of years, we've had this transformation of 2D or text into this spatial learning, and not everyone can do that. And you have to be a special kind of person, usually a more nerdy, geeky kind of engineering person, to sort of grow up and have that thought process of these mathematical or line drawing transformations. But we've all evolved to be in a very volumetric spatial world. That's like the native way we are on this planet. And what I'm excited about the possibility of Lightfields is that it allows everyone on the planet who has that native spatial processing in the brain to maybe start to think and do things and understand concepts, whether it's complex, concepts about physics, mathematics, architectural concepts, a doctor looking at a really sophisticated, problem in someone's heart, and you can move around, not just like what we call 3D on a screen, but there's a true spatial reality of an object that you can examine as if it was completely and really there. That's how our brains natively work. And I think you'll have some interesting breakthroughs that will include a lot more people in areas of maybe technology and design that were excluded because they don't have that transfer function between the abstract to spatial reality. But everyone has the spatial reality capability. I think that's going to be really interesting and maybe a more democratic way of inviting science and complex topics into the wider population. And I think that'll have a lot of impact on everything from education, architecture, medicine. There are doctors who are great at certain things, but they don't have that full spatial understanding. And the world they came from at Mako, we saw all those errors. We even worked with folks at Harvard understanding those errors in things like hip surgery. So that spatial combination is very difficult to be abstract, a 2D thing or a plan and then execute it. So I think it would be really cool to see that happen, and I think it'll make life easier for a lot of people. It'll open more doors for a lot of people because we're making technology fit how our brains evolved into the physics of the universe, rather than forcing our brains to adapt to a more limited technology. I don't know if that makes sense. We're making technology bend to our neurology and to our way of being, which I think is an important trend for everything in engineering.
And I know that, so related to that is something we've talked about, is what will that mean for the other devices that people have? Their laptop, phone, tablet. This is something we think about in terms of how we might partner, but do you want to comment on that with regards to
I'll
us?
give you with my view, what the next 10 to 15 years might look like, and then what happens beyond. I think if you deconstruct a laptop or a computer, but let's focus on a laptop, there's the processor, there's memory, there's interface ports, there's the display, there's the keyboard and trackpad. I think if you deconstruct it, the processor, the CPU, GPU, memory, those are important. They get reconfigured and they get put somewhere else. Those don't go away, and the companies that make those processors, in fact, will have this really nice, I think, multi-decade run of really needing more GPU, really needing all kinds of power and sensing capability and more AI capability. So that's actually good for people in computing. The current design of computing them doesn't make any sense in this new world. Like the configuration of it, the people that make displays, that is all going to radically change, and it will change over the next decade and a half, if companies like Magic Leap, not only us, but if companies like us are successful. And I think we're also, it's going to sound contradictory, wanting to play well through that transition. There's Thomas Kuhn had this discussion about paradigm shifts and like things die and other things are born. our goal is there a soft transition point where the ecosystem of phones and tablets and computers still play well with these new devices? And we realize we can't come in and like think everything is going to die or change overnight. That's actually not a good idea. How do you play well within other ecosystems and then have transitions occur because it's simply a better experience and it's just a better product? And I think what you'll have happen near the end of the decade are like just massive step functions, where you start to get to scale and you start to have these crystallization events, and like with mobile phones, suddenly everyone's got a mobile phone, and all these weird second and third derivative things start happening. So I think there's a lot of interesting activity in the next 2 years, in the next 5 years, but the next 10 to 15 years are like totally nonlinear. They're completely out of control. We can only imagine what's going on. But it should be all good, and there's a lot of interesting opportunity. Hopefully it's all good.
And I want to say, I'm really glad you shared that. Also, I thought, what a profound comment there. You said something like the current design paradigm of computing has no place in the future. But that's a tweetable moment to me. But you also I thought, I'm really glad you shared openly this idea that these platforms could work together, at least through the interim. It's a very interesting idea for me that before you talked to me about that, I really hadn't seen that. I think that's something I underline.
Let me give you a specific example. Like, there's, let's say, a 10-person design team. 3 of them are in Africa. 2 of them are in Florida, Magic Leap, and the rest are your team, in the Boston area. So let's say that the team in Africa has 1 Magic Leap system, 2 mobile phones. The Magic Leap team has all Magic Leaps, and the team at OnShape has got a Magic Leap and 2 workstations or something. There's a distribution, different kinds of computing technology, but we want software and ecosystems that allow all those people with those devices to still have an input, to still make a difference. Because even a decade from now, if there's a billion things like what we're talking about out there, there will be 5 or 6 billion mobile phones and tablets and other kind of devices that emerge to people that never had anything before. So I think it's important to be very considerate for the parts of the world that are getting their very first computers for the first time, a $20 Android phone or a $30 Android phone in emerging countries or in areas where they have no technology, and to be considerate that they can still co-create stuff with people that have different tech, maybe a slightly more futuristic tech, and then how do we get that kind of tech to them? If you think that way, you really want there to be a symbiotic ecosystem of these devices. Because the phone in the hands of a villager that never had technology could be an economic upswing for a whole region. And we love that idea. We don't want that to go away. And imagine that villager with an OnShape type thing designs a park. That park's useful. Someone wants to buy it. And then here I am in Magic Leap using my system, looking at that park a guy on an Android phone in a village in Africa design. I think that's really cool.
And I wanted to ask, I think what's on, I imagine a lot of attendees' minds today is, so if you want to do something great in this new world of mixed reality, Lightfield, or the other platforms, if you want, what advice do you have for people who are trying to come up with new ideas, for new businesses, for new products, for new ways to help the world? It may not be a business, a nonprofit. For ways to use this technology in their own business, besides coming to events like this. Do you have any recommendations?
I do. I think there's, I would call it ramen noodle style entrepreneurship, which, there's no reason why like 1 or 2 or 3 students, an advisor, couldn't just get together and start writing software and imagining what's the next Snapchat, what's the next piece of code or software or game or experience or productivity suite that lives in this new world. And it's definitely not too soon to start building that. We host people, we do boot camps, there's all kinds of ways to start doing that. That is the least friction way to start building stuff. The harder way is if you want to develop your own platform. If you want to do metal and optics and build a computer, that is a bit like saying, I'm going to go make a Tesla or a SpaceX. So I don't want to discourage people from doing that. You just have to have the stomach for like enormous lifting of boulders over mountains. It is not for everyone. But if you got that in you, then I would say this is also a great time to go start up whatever it is you're going to do. It's kind of a Wild West in how computing is going to shift. So I think it's an exciting time.
Well, that's great. You mentioned, you said boot camps and other ways to engage with the platform. And my guess is that's going to be very interesting to a lot of people here. you also said about carrying huge boulders up. I have to say, in my career, I get to work with some of the coolest product designers in the world who are customers of the various products I've built, and today with OnShape. And one of the things that's really cool about Rony is you, from the day I met you, after the first time I met you, I said, I may have met the guy who, this is your last company, has the most ambitious systems engineering design vision I'd ever seen, and then you topped it again with Magic Leap. So there's nobody I know who thinks about a more complex but yet simple vision, but that might involve very complex, ambitious, and almost crazy levels of work to achieve it. So I think that makes you really special. And I wanted to ask if you would talk for a moment, not about what you're making or the impact in the world, but what I find really interesting and a really rare chance to hear from is how you work at Magic Leap, which I think is different. The process you use, if you call it a process, you're building something different, but are you also working differently in order to build something different?
We are, and this is a great topic. This is one of the things John and I did prime on, so we did some prep. I think there's a cool term, I think we started calling it together agile chaos. And I think it's a really good description of what you need to be doing in a startup. So chaos is not completely random, but there is this frothy, creative, just nonlinear, what the heck's going on moment where you stumble into an idea and it's full of excitement and energy like a lightning strike. And you actually want that chaos. That chaos is good. It creates change and revolution. And agile chaos is the only way I know to cope with it. If you think of agile coding or agile development, where you just need to take this emergent idea and keep testing it and keep iterating it. I think the Wright brothers are a good idea. I think they made many hundreds of failed attempts to fly before they had their first 60 or 70 feet. And it just kept breaking and falling and breaking and falling and iterating. And the agility is where you put some form and structure to it. I do not believe there is any kind of waterfall or highly planned way to do anything like what we're doing, what Jon's doing. I think there is a form of accepting the chaos. Like I told some of our team, it's like surfing on big waves in Hawaii. You try to not fall off of it, and you have to just sort of become one with it. And then when the order emerges, you then go, what happened to all the innovation? So you kind of want to keep a level of that chaos balanced in an agile, adaptive way. Chaos meaning it's still creative, it's still undefined, there's still that moment of unknowing. And John had a great story about a really cool discovery of medicine. I think that's a great metaphor.
Oh yeah. I read a book, by the way, a little book citation. It's called A Perfect Mess. It's about how chaos can actually be optimal for some processes. And I read that book years ago when I visited Rony one time. I said to some of your people, I'm like, you got to read this book, because one of your people said, oh, I feel bad, I'm not more organized. And I said, no, you're organized where you need to be, but you're chaotic and agile. And this is a trend I see in our customers all over the world. They're going to what is described as an agile design process, and it's very different. I'm glad you said waterfall won't get you there. Stage gate won't get you there anymore. This feeling of agile chaos is a good one to nurture, especially when you're in these wild technologies. The story is about, I may not get this perfectly right, the guy who discovered penicillin. Who was that? Fleming? Is that right? Someone here knows. Was it?
Someone here must know that.
Yeah. Someone from the medical school?
Alexander Fleming.
Alexander Fleming. And he discovered penicillin, and the story, as I get it, was his lab was a mess, and he went away on holiday, and when he came back, the mold had grown, but where the penicillin was, it didn't grow. And so years later, they walked him through a beautiful, well-organized lab in Britain, and they said, Dr. Fleming, just imagine the discoveries you would have made if you would have had this beautiful, well-organized lab. And Fleming said, not penicillin. And so that's what I thought of when I visited Magic Leap. And so
there's a very Zen-like thing to that, because if you think of like water running down a mountain, it's not going in a straight line, it's going around things and through things and over things, and there's this path it's following, which has like this natural affinity with the physics of pulling it down the mountain. And I think that's what a startup is. You have to follow this almost Taoist path of where this emergent idea is taking you. And if you're not willing to do that, you're not willing to go on that almost like Colorado river rafting ride of adventure and discovery, which you can fall off and bang your head and get really ill sometimes. If you're not willing to do that, then starting something up is probably not the right thing. But if you wake up in the morning, you're like, that's what I love doing, then you put on your helmet, you just jump in the raft and you go.
Well, to pick up on your water analogy, Ronnie, there's a force of gravity though that pulls. Even though there's a lot of chaos, there's a gravity, and I'd submit that you are the gravitational vision force that pulls the water streams magically in the right direction.
Use the force.
Right, use the force, right, you're the force.
I would add one thing to it. I think there is sort of like, and then this gets, Kevin Kelly, who was a great tech writer, talks about this, the concept of what technology actually wants, like technology is a force in the universe, like gravity. And I think some people are actually channeling or tapping into or just paying attention to this emergent complexity of all the systems in the universe coming together and going, oh, I think that's cool, I hear or see that. They put their ear on the ground and they hear that little piece. I think people that are building companies or doing things are kind of like getting a tiny fraction of a future state vision of like where the universe is heading. And then in their own little world, you kind of articulate that future state vision and rally people around it. But there's also a lot of emergent things happening around you that you may not be able to fully articulate. Maybe the way you articulate is by this visual description or tapping into it. I think every entrepreneur is like channeling a small lightning strike in a much bigger picture. And I think we're all inside a big super system, which is a lot of complexity, and we have our own little part in how that plays out. I think it gets pretty cool at some point.
Well, I think that many of us have a little part, but I think I have every confidence that, Rony, you have a big part. And I think with what you're doing now, I think you are going to touch a lot of people's lives in my small part of the world with OnShape and CAD systems, and in a lot of parts of the world. And I know for me, it's always special when I get a chance to talk to you. I hope everyone here has really enjoyed this opportunity to meet Rony and discover what a special person he is. And I think we all learned something. And so with that, I want to say thank you, first of all, for what you're doing with Magic Leap, but also thank you for taking the time to join us here today. So Rony, thanks a lot.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. All right. Okay, so I would love for that conversation to go on and on and on because there's so much more I'd like to learn. But we have a busy day ahead of us, and I just wanted to give you a quick overview